Hi guys, I'm Kenny James Lucy.
And I am Marife de Los Santos, and today we're gonna discuss to you the deadlock and starvation.
I got no rules, I count 'em. I got no rules, I count 'em. Been down, been down, been down, been open.
Go.
Do you have an idea what is deadlock and starvation?
List and explain the condition of deadlock. Define deadlock prevention and describe deadlock prevention strategies related to each of condition for deadlock.
Explain the difference between deadlock prevention and deadlock avoidance. Understand two approaches to deadlock avoidance.
Explain the fundamental differences in approach between deadlock detection and deadlock prevention or avoidance.
Understand how an integrated deadlock strategy can be analyzed the dining philosopher's problem.
And explain the concurrency and synchronization methods of Unix, Linux, Solaris, Windows, and Android.
In this video, examine two problems that plug all effort to support concurrent processing, deadlock and starvation. We begin with the discussion of underlying principle of deadlock and the related problem of starvation. Then we will examine the three common approaches to dealing with deadlock, prevention, detection, and avoidance. We will then look at one of the classic problems used to illustrate both synchronization and deadlock issues, the dining philosopher's problem. Before we deeply understand what is deadlock and starvation, first, I would like to introduce the deadlock. Deadlock as the department blocking of set of processes that either complete for system, resources, or communicate with one another. This definition is valid for a single system as well as for distributed system. As with mutual exclusion, deadlock present more complex problem in a distributed system compared with a shared memory system. Deadlock handling is complicated in the distributed system because no node has accurate knowledge of the current state of the overall system, and because every message transfer between process involves an unpredictable delay. Okay, this is the two types of distributed deadlock. As receive attention and literature, those that arise in the allocation of resources, and those that arise with the communication of message. In resource, deadlock process attempt to access resources such as data, objective in a database or I/O, resources on a server. Deadlock occurs if each process in a set of process requests a resource held by another process in the set. In communication, deadlocks message are the resources for which process wait. Deadlock occurs if each process in a set is waiting for a message from another process. This is the set and no process in the set ever send a message. To the next slide, I will show you the example of deadlock. Two types of deadlock, the deadlock A and the deadlock B. This is the explanation for sample of this deadlock. Car 1 traveling north needs quadrant A and B. Car 2 traveling west needs quadrant B and C. Car 3, this car, traveling south needs quadrant C and D. Car 4 traveling east need quadrant D and A. The rule of the road in the United States is that a car at a four-way stop should defer to a car immediately to its right. This rule works if there are only 2 or 3 cars at the intersection. Example, if only the northbound and westbound cars arrive at the intersection, the northbound car will wait at the car proceed. However, if all 4 cars arrive at about the same time, all the 4 follow the rule. Each will refrain from entering the intersection. This causes potential deadlock. It is the only a potential deadlock because the necessary resources are available for any of the cars to proceed if one of eventually chooses to proceed can do so. 4 cars arrive in the intersection like the deadlock and B. But, however, if all 4 cars ignore the rules and proceed into the intersection at the same time, then each car seizes 1 resources but cannot proceed because the acquired second resource has already been seized by another car. This is an actual deadlock. Okay, this is the meaning of deadlock prevention and avoidance. Deadlock prevention, a technique that guarantees that a deadlock will not occur. Prevention is achieved by assuring that one of the necessary conditions for deadlock is not met. Deadlock avoidance, a dynamic technique that examines each new resource requires for deadlock. If the new request could not to a deadlock, then the request is denied.
Potentially led to a deadlock. Deadlock avoidance thus requires knowledge of future processes, resources, requests. Approaches of deadlock avoidance. Do not start a process if it demands might lead to deadlock. And 2 is do not grant the incremental resource request to a process if this allocation might lead to deadlock. There are strengths and weaknesses to all of the strategies for dealing with deadlock. Rather than attempting to design an OS facility that employs only one of these strategies, it might be more efficient to use different strategies in different situations. Number 1, group resources into a number of different resources classes. Number 2, use a linear ordering strategy defined previously for the prevention of circular weight to prevent deadlock between resources classes. Number 3, within a resources class, use the algorithm that is more appropriate for that class. Currency mechanisms. Unix provides a variety of mechanisms for inter-processor communication and synchronization. Here, we look at the most important of these: pipes, messages, shared memory, semaphores, signals. Next, signal. Linux kernel concurrency mechanisms. Linux includes all of the concurrency mechanisms found in the other Unix system, such as SBR4, including pipes, messages, shared memory, and signals. Linux also supports a special type of signaling known as RT or real-time signals. It includes a rich set of concurrency mechanisms specifically intended for use when a thread is executing in kernel mode. And this is the Linux automatic operation. Solaris thread synchronization primitives. Solaris support 4 thread synchronization primitives. Number 1 is mutual exclusion or mutex locks. Number 2, semaphores. Number 3, multiple readers, single writer or readers writer locks. Number 4, condition variables. And And this is the table of Solaris thread synchronization primitives. Windows concurrency mechanisms. Windows provides synchronization among threads as part of the object architecture. The most important methods of synchronization are executive dispatcher objects, user mode critical sections, slim reader-writer locks, condition variables, and lock-free operation. And this is the table 6.6, Windows synchronization objects. Android inter-process communication. The Linux kernel includes a number of features that can be used for inter-process communication or IPC, including pipes, shared memory, messages, sockets, semaphore, and signals. Android does not use this feature for IPC, but rather adds to the kernel a new capability known as binder. Avoidance, an approach to solving a deadlock problem that differs subtly from deadlock prevention, is deadlock avoidance. In deadlock prevention, we constrain resource requests to prevent at least one of the 4 conditions of deadlock. This is either done indirectly by preventing one of the 3 necessary policy conditions, the mutant conditions, holding weight, and preemption, or directly by preventing circular weight. This leads to an inefficient use of resources and inefficient execution of processes. Deadlock avoidance, on the other hand, allows the 3 necessary conditions but makes judicious choices to assure that the deadlock point is never reached. As such, avoidance allows more concurrency than prevention. With deadlock avoidance, a decision is made dynamically whether the current resource allocation request will. Summary, deadlock is a blocking of a set that processes that either compete for system resources or communicate with each other. The blockage is permanent unless the OS takes some extraordinary action, such as killing one or more processes or forcing one or more processes to backtrack. Deadlock is involved reusable resources or consumable resources. A reusable resources is one that is not depleted, or destroyed by use, such as an I/O channel or a region of memory. A consumable resources is one that is destroyed when it is acquired by a process, such as messages and information in I/O buffers. There are 3 general approaches to dealing with deadlock: prevention, detection, and avoidance. Deadlock prevention guarantees that deadlock will not occur by assuring that one of the necessary conditions for deadlock is not met. Deadlock detection is needed if the OS is always willing to grant resource requests. Periodically, the OS must check for deadlock and take action to break the deadlock. Deadlock avoidance involves the analysis of each new resources request to determine if it could lead to deadlock, or granting it only if the deadlock is not possible. And thank you guys for watching.
I got no rules, I count 'em. I got no rules, I count 'em. Bread, whipping down, whipping down, right. Bread, whipping down, whipping open.
What up, world? It's your boy, just one of the guys down here. Well, I could be more specific. I'm a human, and just wanted to, for the sake of all of us Earthlings out there, just wanted to say, we love the Earth. It is our planet. We love the Earth. It is our home. We love the Earth. It is our planet. We love the Earth.
For our summary, deadlock summary.